Good morning, Anne Arundel County. Welcome to the Anne Arundel County Delegation Meeting. We want to begin by taking roll call today. Mr. Secretary, could you please take the roll?
This roll, one. Okay, this roll is for Anne Arundel County Delegation Meeting, 21 March 2025. Vice Chair Simmons.
Present.
Delegate Bagnall.
Present.
Delegate Barnes. Delegate Bartlett.
Here.
Delegate Baylor. Delegate Chang.
Here.
Delegate Chisholm. Delegate Howard. Delegate Jones.
Present.
Delegate Kipke.
Present.
Delegate Lehman. Delegate Pena-Melnick.
Present.
Delegate Congolo.
Present.
Delegate Rogers.
Here.
Delegate Schmidt.
Schmidt present, thank you.
Chair Pruski.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Today's Pledge of Allegiance and Prayer will be brought by our Vice Chair, Delegate Gary Simmons.
Thank you. Can all rise and face the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Heavenly Father God, we thank you, Lord, for allowing us on this path. We appreciate you standing by us on this journey, Lord, as we continue to do the people's work in the people's house. Lord, give us strength to finish the journey, Lord. Continue to push us forward and uplift us. Let us unite as a body. Let us move the priorities of our county and our state forward. Let us continue to take care of each other and watch over each other, Lord. Let us continue to know that there's strength and fellowship. Watch over the Anne Arundel County delegation and all that we do. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Vice Chair Simmons, for bringing the Pledge of Allegiance. Before we get into today's business, I do have a few announcements for the delegation. If you can recall, of course, a few of us were not here, but about 5 years ago, we used to have a delegation appreciation lunch for members and staff. Well, we are bringing it back. If you have any questions, please see Mr. Secretary. The event, though, is April 2nd from 11:30 to 1:30, and it will include a box lunch. Again, as far as payment and orders, please see the Mr. Secretary. Again, delegation lunch, for those of you probably 5 years ago, you remember it. And it's always a good time because it obviously provides some appreciation to staff and to our delegates in Anne Arundel. The next one, and this is new, at the behest of the chair and vice chair, we kind of came together and we are going to celebrate the birth of Anne Arundel County. For those of you that don't know the history, Anne Arundel County actually separated from St. Mary's. We'll talk about on that day. We actually invited some of our St. Mary's delegates to celebrate our revolution from them. But on April 4th, we will have Anne Arundel Day. This will be a new tradition that we'll have here at the House of Delegates. We've invited distinguished guests, leaders in Anne Arundel County to join us. That event will occur on April 4th from 8 to 10. It is very informal, but probably around 8:15 or 8:30, we'll start program and have special guests. But I wanted to let everybody know, kind of the information related to it and mark it on your calendar. I'm sure Mr. Secretary can send out, another follow-up email, but I want to let everybody know about Anne Arundel Appreciation Day. So again, mark those on your calendar. Please see Mr. Secretary if you have any questions. So thank you, and we'll move forward. We do have a cross-file bill today. I want to introduce Senator Lamb. SB 972, Anne Arundel County Board of License Commissioners, alterations. I know he's gonna present the bill, and then we also have some other folks to testify, and we'll open it up for questions. Senator Lamb, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you, Chair Pruski, members of the House delegation of Anne Arundel County, here to present Senate Bill 972 as a sponsor. This obviously has passed. The Anne Arundel County Senate delegation is coming over now. So this bill is really seeking to address concerns that I've consistently heard since a portion of Anne Arundel County of North County was added to my district. And since beginning to represent Anne Arundel County a few years ago, I've been receiving many complaints about perceived bias in liquor regulation processes in the county and complaints about the liquor board being overly aggressive oftentimes in taking action on minor issues. Over my last 10 years in office, I've represented 2 other counties, have never received as many complaints about their respective liquor boards as I have from liquor store owners here in Anne Arundel County. And just to make clear, these are from all areas of the county, not just North County. Certainly recognize these are anecdotal complaints, but I do believe that we owe it to license holders in the county to at least try to collect some data and have some modest changes to the board to address some of these concerns and also to help with good governance and such. So this is not a new concern to the delegation or to the liquor board. I brought this up during the delegation's last joint meeting prior to the start of the legislative session. I think that was in November, December. My office has also been reviewing liquor board hearings and decisions after learning about these complaints during the interim, and it was very difficult to be able to compile data on liquor board decisions and specific owners in a way that could help identify any potential biases because of a lack of easily collectible and usable data. And finally, I did meet with the liquor board prior to the session to discuss my concerns, to make clear that we did have a conversation with them. And when asked about conflicts of interest and potential bias, I was told by the commissioners that they do not have a written recusal policy. They just recuse when they believe that they may have a conflict of interest. And while they also mentioned that they would be willing to hear from any complaints of owners about bias, the owners have been who have reached out are indicating that they're very afraid to be able to communicate their concerns because of fear of retaliation. So what this bill does is try to improve transparency and accountability with the liquor board. And as amended coming over, it does 5 main things. And so the first provision here is that it increases the size of the liquor board from 3 to 5 members. This helps ensure that no single commissioner has an outsized influence on the decisions of the board. It will also allow for a more diverse board and help ensures that the board has enough members to be able to hear cases when one member has to recuse. As you can understand, with 3, if one recuses, you're really down to 2. Much more difficult to kind of thread the needle in making some of those decisions. We understand that there has been a desire in the past when this issue has been looked at, the expansion of the liquor board. There's been a desire from the delegates to have input on the selection of the liquor board members who are brought and identified and appointed by the governor. And so we've been working to try to find a path forward that can satisfy the desire of the delegates, all of you, and to have some more input in this process, and also to be able to clear the Senate delegation as well. You know, the senators obviously feel like this should be a Senate function, but they understand and recognize that, you know, the delegates would like to have more input in this process too. I know in the past there's been discussion about having veto over the folks that might be considered by the senators. I think that would be a hard pill to swallow for the senators. So you're just kind of putting that out there. So what this bill has is a provision to try to thread that needle. So it says that the governor shall only appoint someone who is selected from a list of individuals that are recommended by the members of the House and the Senate delegation. So both delegations will be able to put names into the appointments office, and the appointments office could only select from those names. This actually gives the House a more say in the process to be able to place some limitations, because right now the governor's office and the appointments office could select anybody from whoever they choose. In this fashion, you know, we'll be able to put specific names in, and they have to pick from those names. The delegates will be able to do that as well, just as the senators do. Number 2, it creates a cooling off period before a liquor board inspector or a chief liquor inspector becomes a member of the board. So this is because chief liquor inspectors are oftentimes involved in all of the cases before their board. And there is a concern that if the chief inspector becomes a board member, they will have knowledge about the ongoing cases that could bias their rulings. designed similarly to the cooling off period that legislators have if they would become lobbyists after retiring. Number 3, it requires that the board have a written recusal policy. This just seems like basic good governance. If there's a process here, at least everyone can make sure they're abiding by it. There's no question about whether someone should recuse or not. Number 4, it requires the board to have a voluntary race disclosure question on their licensure application and report data on the racial breakdown of disciplinary actions. Again, to be clear, this is optional. So licensed applicants could check off a box to identify their race. They do not have to. I recognize that the complaints that we've heard are obviously anecdotal, but because of the repeated nature of the complaints, it's our belief that we should start collecting some data. We did check with the Office of the Attorney General on the legality of this, and Sandy Brantley did convey that this was legal and permissible. And just to make sure that it could not be used in a way to harm applicants, we added language prohibiting the use of this data for licensure decisions. Now, in the Senate hearing, the board has contended that there is no racial bias or any type of other bias in the enforcement of the liquor law. And if that's true, then we believe that the data collected should show this out. Number 5, and appreciate Senator Giles' help with this provision. She suggested creating a structure where there's a graduated fine to help ensure fair discipline, so that if it's the first violation, they would be able to impose a fine not exceeding $1,000. So it could be up to $1,000. It doesn't have to be that full amount. They have leeway up to $1,000, and then it's graduated for the second offense and subsequent offenses and so forth. Certainly open to considering exceptions to the graduated fine structure for any serious or safety violations, such as serving to underage individuals. I think we had a letter that may have just come in from the police department referencing the fact that, you may want to have referencing some concerns, mostly based around the fact that there's underage drinking. And for those types of violations, I'm open to an exception to say that there is no graduated structure there. Certainly also recognize that we want to keep our liquor board solvent, and there's been discussions this session and in past sessions about the rates and the fees that are charged to applicants to make sure that the liquor board is self-sufficient wholly, because there may be some support coming in from the county, and there may be additional needs as well. So I want to make sure that is addressed. So there's thoughts on that, certainly open to that. In closing, most liquor store owners are small family businesses that are run by our residents who are just really trying to get by. So although they must follow the law, I think they also need to be confident that they get a fair shake if they have to appear before the liquor board for adjudication. I believe this is especially important because the liquor boards are very insulated from any form of oversight. A member can only be removed by the governor, so they can only be removed by the governor. That's the only way to address concerns in that way. And for only very narrow causes. And a judicial review of a liquor board decision is also very narrow. In some ways, courts are more limited in their review of liquor board decisions than any other state agency decisions. So for requesting an amendment, as I referenced, to exempt minors from the graduated fines, so those more serious violations could result in a higher fine, as it was before. That's the bill. Certainly open to further discussion, considerations, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Lamb. I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions for the sponsor, and then we'll open it up to the unfavorable panel. Is there any questions for the sponsor? I'll give it a second here. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure I understand procedurally. This would go through the Senate. Do we have to pass it out of our delegation?
So there was no cross-file. So this is the first hearing on the House side.
I got you. Okay.
If we'd have to go through and then amendments and seeing what's there. Yeah.
And has it already passed out of the Senate side?
Yes, this is fully passed the Senate and had the support of the Senate delegation.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Chisholm. It looks like Delegate Bagnall, then Delegate Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thought I heard you speak, Senator, to potential amendments to address the concerns on the penalties, but I didn't see them. Are those captured in, is there an additional document, or was that just a point of discussion?
We've requested an amendment to exempt minors from the graduated fines. It is not in the Senate version that's coming over. So happy to have the House, if you choose, to add that on.
To adopt it. Okay, thank you.
Now that it's in the House's possession.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, Senator, you had spoken to a number of anecdotal experiences. Did you escalate these to the County Commission on Human Relations or the State Commission on Civil Rights? What is their role in capturing those concerns and investigating them?
We did not forward those on. We have met with some of these concerned liquor store owners. We've brought to their attention the different avenues that they could pursue if they choose to escalate. I think many of them are just very fearful, and we didn't want to disclose them without their willingness to, have their names go public. And so I think they're very fearful for potential retaliation, so they didn't want to go public.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that
Happy to connect you with any of them if
no, that these resources exist. So thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Delegate Rogers, are you good? I want to make sure.
And this is more of a procedural question, and I was just going to ask the senator if he'd been given an ECM date yet for a hearing, since it passed the Senate and it's come over to the House, and that's going to end up being the committee of jurisdiction.
I don't believe we have an ECM date yet. It just came over probably on Friday or Monday.
Okay, that was my only question for now.
Thank you, Delegate Rogers. Delegate Jones.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good morning, Senator. I was just curious if any other counties have ever tried to any legislation similar to this, or is this the first of its kind? Anything similar anywhere else?
So not sure exactly which provisions you're referring to. I know when we did some of our research, liquor board sizes kind of vary quite a bit. Usually they're in the size of 3 to 5. Prince George's County does have a graduated fine structure. I think that may have been where Senator Guile found that, and again, certainly appreciate her suggestion on that. I imagine that most of these probably have some type of recusal policy.
Right.
I was surprised that there was no written recusal policy in this instance. That seems like just kind of basic good governance. But beyond that, I think, when it comes to the provisions of number of members, most of them are 3 to 5, but even some smaller counties have 5. I think Harford County, Cecil County, they have 5. So
thank you so much, Senator.
Sure.
Thank you, Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for bringing the bill. I just want to know and understand the old adage of what problem we're trying to correct. And I say that because we're also going to be compiling data to see just how extensive of a problem there is. You mentioned that most of what we have now is anecdotal. So I'd like to have, if you don't mind, at least 1 or 2 instances, so I at least know what we're trying, how extensive we think there is a, that there may be a problem. So it's like we're doing 2 things at one time in the bill. We're collecting data, but we're also making changes based on the anecdotes. So that's where I am, to see if we have something already concrete.
Yeah, I'm happy to share, details of specific individual liquor store owners that have brought concerns to us, and even to connect you with them so that you can hear directly from them. An example might be, we had a liquor store owner who's a person of color who was cited for having a sink in the wrong place, for example. And fined and had to go through a whole process. We had someone else who I think complained about having signs maybe at closer to waist level instead of at exactly at eye level, and just receiving what they believe is kind of an undue harshly punishment. So there are other examples as well. Those are just kind of easy ones to be able to explain. There are other ones related to, kind of architectural plans and this, that, and whatnot. But happy to pass along examples if that's helpful.
Thank you.
So the data collection, I think, is important in
Yes.
being able to, because when we looked at, my staff looked at hearings that the liquor board has, and it is really difficult to be able to marry that up with different characteristics of liquor store owners. And so it's hard to kind of be able to come up with that data. So we believe this is because it's optional. It's an optional data collection. Liquor license applicants don't need to fill out this field for their ethnicity or if they don't want to. But it gives us some ability to be able to do a look back and see if there's bias occurring here. The other piece of this are really just kind of good governance. A written recusal policy. I think that should be written down. The expansion of the liquor board really, when you have instances where somebody might have a bias, it does drop us down to 2 members. Sorry, not a bias, has a need to recuse. It drops us down. 3 is sometimes tough when you're trying to, balance fairness and different perspectives on a board. And 5 just brings in some additional kind of eyes to this process, and also to review citations that might be identified and come out.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I just have one quick follow-up question?
Sure.
Thank you. So, do you know if now, and this may be a question that I can ask the liquor board too. Do you know now when there is a citation, I'm assuming there is a legal reference. I'm hoping that there's a legal reference to the citation. Do you know if that happens now or not?
I believe they have to be referencing some part of the statute for the violation. Yeah.
Okay, I would hope so. Okay, I'll ask them as well and get more into that process. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Bartlett. Delegate Rogers, and then Delegate Pena-Melnick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the folks in the House delegation, I guess this is my Me Too moment, where I too have heard a number of instances, specifically from the Asian American retailers, of them being targeted with inspections and some of the findings. But I also need to say, as the subcommittee chair and talking to non-minority liquor store owners, that there have been questions about some of the practices. So to the extent that this bill gets at some of the documentation that the senator's talking about, there's probably some goodness in that, because there have been complaints across Anne Arundel County with respect to some of these issues. So I just wanted to make sure that I got that on the record as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Pena-Melnick.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I have to have my video off, but I am double screening, waiting to be let into another delegation. And good morning, everyone. My question is, and I just want to confirm because I think I do know the answer. Senator, what is the ethnicity of the 3 members right now for the board?
Currently, there is a white male, there is a African American male, and there's a white female.
Okay. And do we know of the other 23 jurisdictions, are there liquor boards, the number of people that make up the board, is it so small, 3? Because if someone's out sick, that's a lot of power for 2 people. It's not balanced. Do we know? I know that Prince George just had similar issues, and we restructured the whole board to address a lot of these issues, and we haven't had any problems since. And I know Senator Rosapep, who probably talked to you a lot, had a lot to do with that in helping us with that restructure. Do we know what the numbers is for most liquor boards?
In our research, it usually bounced between 3 and 5, but
Okay.
it just varies. Like Howard County, for example, the council serves as a liquor board, so we have 5. I think
Okay.
Harford County is 5, Cecil County is 5. We couldn't find a good rhyme or reason. I think at some point during the legislative process, some of these have been expanded. Others just haven't had that opportunity yet.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your work. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Pena-Melnick. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted, for point of order, back in January, you had circulated a task force report with several other documents that kind of, and some of the incidents that were alluded to earlier, just at least a portion of them were included in that report. I thought it might be best if you if we could have that recirculated again, that might help Delegate Bartlett as well, because I know that some of those things were addressed in there so that she has some more clarity on some of the complaints that came in.
And I think you're referring to the work group. Is that correct?
Right. There was a work
Del-
group done over the summer. I know Delegate Kipke sat on it. I think maybe Senator Lamb may have been on there and some others. Okay. They put it along. I remember seeing the report. It's a pretty extensive report. And then there were some accompanied letters to it. And I think the board even responded to some of them. But at least it gave a lot more detail on some of the things we're talking about here.
Yeah, and appreciate the chair's effort to convene that work group together. And I think the chair did participate in the work group. So, yeah, thank you.
I did not. It was
I
Senator
did not.
Kyle
Oh, okay.
and,
But you had a hand in making that work group.
yes,
So
we
thank you.
requested it on behalf of several people, but yes, thank you. Okay, Delegate Pena-Melnick, I didn't know if you had your hand raised still or.
No, that's a mistake. Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions for the sponsor? Okay, we're going to move on from this panel to the unfavorables. We have the Board of License Commissioners for Anne Arundel County. You all will have 2 minutes to testify.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that. Members of the delegation, I will be quick. First, I'd like to let you know that we prioritize transparency and public access. Our hearings are held at the County Council chambers. They are live streamed to YouTube as well as cable networks. We advertise the agendas, the cases, the transcripts, and the video. They're all put online. They all stay there. So you can look through and you can, see exactly how we run the hearings and what the decisions were. We also, it's public participation. The board actively engages public participation through both written and oral testimony. Just to talk about violations, this year we had 60 violations in 2024. 46 of those were for serving to minors. This is done by the SAVE unit. Anne Arundel County Police Department gets a grant through the health department, and they go out and they find or go to different establishments, whether it's a restaurant, tavern, packaged goods store. And we have seen an uptick in these serving to minors. So the board does have a concern with the look back of the 24-month history concerning previous violations and behavior. Currently, right now, the board looks at 5 years. We feel that's fair, that's appropriate. It ensures that the licensees are held accountable, especially since most of our violations do come from packaged goods stores selling to minors. And they're doing it over and over again. So that was one part of the bill. When it comes to the data collection, it is voluntary. So this data is going to be inconclusive.
Well, please wrap up, Mr. Aronson. I'm sure there's going to be questions.
Yeah. So the data we feel is going to be inconclusive, and it could lead to skewed results. Thank you for your time.
Okay, we're going to open it up to questions, but I do want to let everybody know the Anne Arundel County Police Department could not make it today, and they sent an email. They were supposed to testify, but they weren't available. And then there was some other testimony from a group called ASAP, Annapolis Substance Abuse Prevention, that was emailed to you all. But I do want to open it up to questions now for the Board of Commissioners. I know there were a few. Looks like Delegate Bartlett, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Aronson, for being here. Quick question. You said that sometimes it's repeatedly, you're finding repeated violations for underage service. What is the result of someone having repeated violations? What are the
Okay.
consequences?
Right, absolutely. Right now, the board, like I said, takes a look at 5 years. For the first offense, usually for minors, there's 2 counts. There's a count for our violating of the rules and regulations, and there's a count for the state code, which are written on the summonses and on the violations with the police report. So the first offense would, if they're found guilty, it would be $500 per count. So it's a total of $1,000. The second offense would be $1,000 per count, so it's $2,000 total. And then if there is a third offense, it's $1,500 per count, which is a $3,000 total. We've luckily only had a couple establishments that have gotten to 4, and the board has suspended their license for a weekend.
Okay, thank you. And then last quick question, the 46 underage service, those are unique? Or are they 46 instances?
Those are 46 instances within the year that the police department has gone out, done a compliance check, and these establishments are serving to minors.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Looks like we have Delegate Bagnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will, start with this caveat that we have also heard concerns about overzealous inspections and violations sort of across the county, not unique to any one district, but that was as you know, that was the impetus for the work group to address some of those concerns and also some of the bills from last year. But my question for you is because I remain concerned about underage drinking and also repeated over serving, because we do have an issue with inhibited driving in this county. Do you know what the look back in other counties is and how the 2 years versus 5 years would compare to our adjacent counties?
I actually do not. I know Baltimore City does take into consideration the last 10 years. But as far as the other jurisdictions, I couldn't tell you, how far back they look with the violations. In regards to the inspections, I think we've gotten better at our job, and that's why we're getting some complaints. Recently, the board, we've gotten iPads for these inspectors. They have a portal. They have a dashboard where they actually go in and they do a real-time inspection with real-time results. So they're going in and they're having, going through their checklist. But it's a little, we're actually just, they're doing it better. So I think it's taking some people a little bit of time to get used to the inspectors going out, seeing them with the iPads. The licensees get the inspection PDF emailed to them as opposed to just leaving on the counter. Sometimes they would never be aware that there was an inspection or that there were problems. So I think it's just a matter of people getting used to it because we've gotten better at doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate to ask to move this to subcommittee to get answers to some of those questions and also to address the proposed amendments? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. If you would, Delegate Bagnell, could we let Delegate Kipke go first?
I just saw his hand. My apologies.
Delegate Kipke, and I'll come back to you, Delegate Bagnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I heard the good lady's motion, and I second it. I would just like to say publicly that the new procedures that have been implemented, in some ways, I think are positive in that, like documents are right there available, and a restaurateur or liquor store owner doesn't have to go scrambling to find all their documents. But I think, and having listened to stories last year and spending time on the work group that was created, I think some of the tasks being asked of the inspectors through the new process go beyond the scope of what the liquor board should be doing. Specifically, I don't know about everybody else, but I am really tired of hearing, these small operators being asked to create drawings, uh, places that have been in business for decades. I have a VFW in my district that was, being asked to spend $3,000 to have professional drawings made. I know you've heard this, Aaron, and I'm saying it respectfully, but being asked things that are more in line with inspections and permits. That's the agency, in my opinion, who should be looking after things. And certainly you can refer things to inspections and permits. But in my 18 years, I've never had as many complaints as I've had in the last, year to 2 years related to perhaps I see it as sort of over aggressive inspections. It sounds like the liquor board might not see it that way, but I just want to publicly say that's where a lot of the angst for me has come from. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I do have one follow-up question, Mr. Ernst, because a part of the bill is adding 2 additional members, which I'm not opposed to. But I did have a question because I get confused, and I apologize. I was on the county council and it's been a while. The budget process. So my understanding is the comptroller collects fees from licensees, correct? And that
Correct.
comes in, but then you ask or request additional tax dollars for your building, your staff. Because I know that I've heard that your fees cover the liquor board costs, and that's not the case. That you're actually taking general taxpayer dollars for your office, your staff. Can you clarify that for me? Because I know there was some confusion about the data I was sent, and like any budget, like our DLS, some years they're under because they have to spend more, other years they're over and they give it back to the general fund. But I want you to clarify for me what you collect, because my personal opinion, whatever fees are collected off of licensees should be paying for the liquor board. I don't think general fund dollars, and I brought that up as a council member, and that's my position now, but I want to make sure you're clear for the body here to explain how that works. Thank you.
Sure. So our budget is approved by the comptroller. Our funds are then sent to the comptroller. The county will issue a invoice quarterly, and then the ATCC will then pay those invoices. At the end of the 4th quarter, everything that is in that fund goes to the county. I pretty much every year we turn money back into the county, into the general fund. Our revenue exceeds our expenditures, less and less each year, but the last couple of years we've had $100,000 that was sent to the general fund. So I wasn't aware that we were using taxpayer dollars for for staff and the office and things like that.
Well, and again, the county unfortunately isn't here, and I'm going to get that answer and send it out to the delegation. I think we just need to make clear, though, it's a big pot of money, right? And the council approves it. But again, there's a certain amount of fees collected, but like your rental for your building, right? That's covered. It's not covered by fees, actually covered by the county. So I think it's important to differentiate that. And the reason why I say that, I am all for possibly adding 2 members, but I also want to make sure how we're paying for it, to be clear. And then the second piece is so folks understand the licensure. And I'm also just going to make this policy recommendation. I believe you should have an attorney on staff full time. The hearings that I've been in and other things, I find that it would be helpful to you all, be helpful to the delegates, to have somebody who legally could answer the questions. I don't know how the board decides or how that works, but I'm just going to make that policy recommendation. That would be something I'd support, and I'd tell the county council and even the comptroller, just because of all these issues that keep coming up, because I believe some of them are very legal specific. They are there. So that's just something I'm just going to put on the record. And I believe we have another question, but I didn't know if you wanted to respond to that or not.
Yeah, well, the state code does allow us to hire an attorney for the salary is $60,000 a year. And he's basically on call 24/7. When we have meetings, he's there not just meetings at the council chambers, but I'm in contact with him several times a day. So are the board members. So it pretty much is like having a full-time attorney. He's just only getting a $60,000 salary per year. We do also have within our budget $30,000 for co-counsel, and that is for appeals. Fortunately, we don't have many appeals, so that money is just basically staying there. But yeah, that allows us to hire a co-counsel as well as a full-time attorney.
Okay, thank you. Looks like Delegate Chisholm.
I'm just going back to the letters we got back on January 29th that showed that they brought in 925,000 and then asked for a 35% raise, which would have got them to 1.2 million, which covers all of their expenses. So I think they do cover all their expenses through the licensing fees. And I think they wanted to increase the licensing fees to raise some salaries in the last report, but I do know they're right around $1 million and it's usually break even.
Okay, any other questions? I want to give it a minute here to make sure we got everybody. Again, I want to reiterate that there was other Corporal Middleton couldn't make it, and then there was another letter, so everybody's got that. But for the liquor board, any other additional questions? Okay. Delegate Bagnall, do you want to reiterate? I apologize. I want to get through the testimony of folks, but you had a motion. I believe it was.
Of course, Mr. Chair. I would move to move this bill to subcommittee to the alcohol subcommittee for consideration of amendments and outstanding questions answered.
Great.
Second.
Yeah, I believe Delegate Kipke, were you the second?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So, and this is a voice vote. We have a motion on the floor to move this bill, SB 972, Anne Arundel County Board of License Commissioners, alterations to the alcohol subcommittee in the House. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Please let the record know that the bill has been moved to alcohol subcommittee. Thank you to Senator Lamb, the alcohol board, for coming here today, and we will continue to follow up as the bill proceeds. All right, we will now move on to Anne Arundel County legislative bond initiatives. I'm going to turn it over to Delegate Jones to kind of give us an update, and you may proceed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, in your inbox, you see a letter addressed to the Appropriations Committee, and in that we have all of our Anne Arundel County LBIs. My office has reached out to your offices on multiple occasions in the last couple of weeks, just in making sure as we not only you all rate your LBIs here. And so all of these are being sent over to appropriations for consideration as we are through the budget process and on to capital. This is an FYI, and the process is moving forward. I think if anyone has a question, you can follow up. But as you know, we've sent several emails regarding this. I want to thank everybody and their staff for getting back to us. For those who did. And with that, I move to send the letter over to appropriations, Chair.
Okay, do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion about the LBI letter being submitted to Chair Barnes? I want to open that up now, and this is going to be just a voice vote. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Delegate Rogers?
Yeah, this was just more of a question. Do we know what the LBI funding looks like for this year?
Is that to me?
I mean, you or
Sure. Well, I'll just quickly say that it is no surprise if you've seen a newspaper over the last 8 months that Maryland is in a difficult situation right now. So pleased to have passed out a budget out of committee that really has our values first. And so outside of that, I will yield to my vice chair on appropriations, Vice Chair Chang.
Delegate Chang?
Great. Thank you very much to the subcommittee chair. Thank you very much to the entire delegation for all the work that's been done, and to leadership of the subcommittee chair, Delegate Dana Jones. Very much appreciate for her tireless effort. Overall, we're looking at right now about $450 requests that were submitted statewide. That comes out to about 150 million in legislative bond initiatives. Both the House and the Senate each have 10 million. So we've got to condense that 150 million to 10 million on each side. So that's where we are as of right now. As with the due diligence that the subcommittee chair Jones and also the entire delegation has done, we'll be looking at as far as the priorities of those projects that are really going to be able to cover the most amount of constituents within the legislative districts and also provide equity and also ensure that these projects, that once those funds are appropriated, that those are able to be utilized most effectively. Earlier this year, prior to the legislative session, there was the priorities meeting, and during that time, members of the delegation shared about the different processes that occurred as far as the funding being appropriated and actually the monies being allocated out into the communities. We, as the Appropriations Committee and also Department of General Services, heard this delegation loud and clear, as long as with other constituents and members of the General Assembly all across the state. So Department of General Services, they are working tirelessly to help make it more seamless process for the members as they serve the constituents and also the constituents as far as accessing those dollars to be able to have those appropriated into our communities. So thank you very much. That is a quick update.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chang, and thank you for answering the question. Is there any additional questions about the LBIs? Again, the letter will be signed, sent, so we can move that forward. Any additional questions? Great. I know there were a few delegates that joined us a little bit later, so I'm going to do 2 quick announcements that I said earlier. It's worth repeating. April 2nd is the delegation lunch. Even though I wasn't here 5 years ago, then we had COVID. That used to be a thing where we'd have the staff and the delegates have appreciation lunch. There are payments that were due. Mr. Secretary can tell you about the menu, the process, but I want to be clear, the date, April 2nd, 11:30 to 1:30. It's a catered lunch. Once again, date and time, April 2nd, 11:30 to 1:30. Please meet with Mr. Secretary to work out the numbers, payment, so that's clear. So that's first announcement. Second one, and this is new on behalf of myself and Vice Chair Simmons. We are starting a day of Anne Arundel Appreciation Day. For those of you that don't know, we revolted from St. Mary's County and became Anne Arundel County, and we want to celebrate that. And we did invite St. Mary's County as well, so we'll recognize them, and hopefully they're nice to us. But on April 4th, from 8 to 10 a.m., we want to celebrate Anne Arundel County, and we're going to bring together many folks. I know one thing, unfortunately, the school board has their national conference. They can't attend, but we wanted to reach out to some of the leaders so we can celebrate. Regardless of party, regardless of where we're at, this is about Anne Arundel. We all serve Anne Arundel. It's a great place. And I think it's important, especially for breaking off of St. Mary's, that we celebrate that. So we will have that. Make sure you have it on your calendar. We will provide a further agenda. I know County Executive Pittman's coming, along with others. And thank you to Mr. Secretary for putting on hospitality breakfast as usual. He does hospitality like nobody else. So I want to give him credit for that. That is it for announcements. Is there any other business before the delegation? Mr. Secretary?
Chairman, can I make one more announcement, please?
Yes, sir.
At the end of this, please come down the hallway, put your name and phone number on the slip paper. We'll be giving away all the spring flowers this morning about 11:30. Thank you.
Great. Vice Chair Simmons?
Yes, I just want to invite delegation out for our District 12 night on Monday afternoon. Feel free to stop by. Suite 170. Look forward to all y'all coming out and having a good time.
Thank you so much. Any other announcements? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion to adjourn.
moved. Second.
Second, great. Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Appreciate you. Hopefully it's going to be a nice day today, and we will see you next week. Take care, everyone.